Welcome to the island of Dr. Fauci. Now, growing up, Anthony Fauci was always a larger than life character. His parents went on record multiple accounts, and went on multiple account records saying that he would take the local neighborhood stray cats and dogs and he would do what he would call himself experiments on them. Now, these experiments would include cutting their limbs open and taping them back up together. They would scalp the poor little cats and dogs. And one time he set a kitten on fire just to see if its fur was fireproof. He took dogs with no homes and broke their bones. He put a dog in a bag and did that silly cartoon thing where he tossed it back and forth side to side, right? And even took a hornet's nest and jammed it on top of the dog's head for no reason. For no more than just to see how the animals would react to what was the pain that he inflicted on these animals, right? Anthony Fauci was deeply disturbed as a child. You may be asking yourself how I know this. Well, I grew up with Fauci, or Tony as we would call him back in the day. In kindergarten, he would suggest to his teacher to use handcuffs and straps on us children so that we would comply with nap time. He would run all kinds of wacky experiments with his classmates. One time, Jamal, the local Negro, was feeling a bit peckish, or under the weather, if you will. And here comes little Anthony Fauci suggesting that he pours bleach all over his skin when he gets home to cleanse it of dirt and bacteria. Well, this poor coon did just as he was told and came back to school the next day as if he's seen a ghost, completely white. But he was red all over. He was red with anger. They had to get the entire school staff of teachers and principals and fucking janitors just to break him up. All the while, Tony kept yelling as he was held back with arms behind his back. He was held, he was held back saying, "Aren't you not sick still? Didn't I get rid of you?" And it's 100%, he's yelling, "Aren't you sick or are you not still sick?" It's 100% efficacy rate. It's effective, safe and effective. Pour bleach over your skin, kids. And God forbid, I think I even heard Anthony Fauci say, you'll be able to get a job now that your skin is clean. That's what he said. The ominous pause it's crazy. Completely unaware of the lasting side effects that mentally, emotionally, or even physically had on the children. Anthony Fauci was either autistic or completely blind to all emotions. He was completely relentless in his pursuit for the sciences. In middle school, we had been dissecting frogs, as many middle schoolers do nowadays. Well, back in the day, I don't know what they're doing. The kids nowadays probably do it on their fucking phones. That's neither here nor there. In middle school, we were dissecting frogs, and all the students, with the exception of some women and a few gays, for the most part, ran the dissection by the book with little to no hiccups, right? Very little hiccups. Of course, that is until we reach Anthony Fauci's desk, and you see he has cut the frog into tiny little jigsaw pieces. And he tried selling it as a puzzle to other classmates. His claim was that he needed more funding to do more research on dead frogs. He said these dead frogs aren't going to pay for themselves and he needs funding. That little stint in science class got him a lifetime ban on all qualified surgeons' operating rooms. He's not allowed to go into any kind of surgery. Can't even Hell, I'm pretty sure he can't even be in the same room as a licensed surgeon without getting a fucking fine, right? That's just the types of stuff he had. Now during Valentine's Day, this is gonna be good. I just gotta light it up. During Valentine's Day, Fauci set up a booth to get your cootie shot. You know, come to think about it, we never really did find out what was in that shot that he gave us all those years back. It must have been something. Licensed cootie shots. He set up a little booth Valentine's Day. And after teaming up, So as the years went by and he graduated from high school with fucking questionable grades, he went into the healthcare industry where he became very popular treating various diseases such as AIDS and COVID-19 with one treatment that had, with treatment after treatment that had questionable benefits. Now, after teaming up with Pfizer to roll out the long-awaited miracle treatment in the form of vaccines for COVID-19, and almost the same number, coincidentally, of the people that got sick naturally and died off, also the ones that were healthy who took the vaccine had also died in the same number. In fact, that it was the only ever case in medical history where the treatment was just as bad, if not worse, than the actual disease. Fauci was the only one that was names behind both of them, right? The families of the vaccinated, the patients that died off are wondering where Fauci went, right? There's a big speculation. He kind of disappeared. About a year after enforcing some of the strictest lockdowns, like the dictatorship, the dictatorship, like directions of denying any other medicine to be available and twisting the arms of the working class into taking a one-size-fits-all shot or losing their fucking jobs, right? They're still wondering, where did this guy go? Nobody knows. Hindsight is 2020, and the take the shot or you will be shot, quota just didn't sit right in the minds of individuals in the general public anymore. But unfortunately, Fauci was nowhere to be found. I write in my journal, as I was sailing the high seas over international waters, waiting for the entire world to be devoured by a black hole sun, when one day I got a bit too drunk and crashed into a small island somewhere between Hawaii and Haiti. Hawaii and Haiti, somewhere in between there. And boy, I was really fucking wasted. I awoke in my drunken slumber, and I noticed two strange looking men, very hairy men, look like they haven't shaved in days, right? Haven't shaved their whole bodies in days. Well, maybe years even. Both of which look like some goddamn pygmies from the fucking tribes that have been uncontacted by the outside world, right? These guys never look like they've been to a city in their whole lives, right? I splashed some water on my face trying to really understand what I was seeing, but as quickly as I did wash my face, I found the two men on top of me, forcing me down, and being so hungover and weak and parched, I was unable to fight these heathens off of me. And they got on top of me and drove a syringe into the midsection of my arm. And it was late at night. I was exhausted, and I passed out due to fatigue in the luminous moonlight setting of the island. The light sparkling off the water islands, and my boat crashed into the side. I was too tired to deal with it. This was my first night on the island. When I awoke, I was greeted by a man, much more civil than the first two men that I've met. His name was Frankie, a short, scrawny man that you could see clearly, clearing some tables at the late night Denny's or something. Just a regular Joe Schmo, a schmuck, if you will, this guy. He says, "My apologies, my good sir," Frankie begins. "Those two animals we call security guards does not mean no harm. They were just following orders." I said, "What orders?" "They pinned me down and shoved a needle in my arm, man." Frankie looks at me and then off into the sunrise. It was morning at the time. "Yes, this island is completely 100% vaccinated. And those two men that you've met that you have met quite the... Oh, wait. Those two men that you've met have quite the job ensuring everybody gets their daily vaccine." I slumped back down in the sand I awoke from, arms still numb. I thought to myself, daily? I asked who's the doctor providing the medicine on this remote island in the middle of nowhere. His answer sent chills through my bones. One word, Fauci. I remember Fauci from middle school, remember earlier on in the scene? I thought to myself, that son of a bitch who got kicked out of virtually every medical lab in history went to a far-out island in hopes to continue his sketchy research with full legal immunity. I said at once to Frankie, I must speak with this Fauci character, as I need to get off this island and go home. Frankie responds, "One doesn't leave the island of Dr. Fauci." Roll credits, guys. Roll fucking credits. I slapped Frankie so hard my hand got sore and I screamed for him to bring me to the nearest doctor at once. He says, "Very well, the doctor could see it to your hand will get fixed, and you did just slap me fairly hard. There's just one condition." I asked what. He said, "Fauci doesn't see anyone until they had their 5 booster shots. That it's an island-wide policy." That's what he said. Realizing the hole I've dug for myself and having next to no other choices than to rot away my brain talking with Frankie, I decide to drink the Kool-Aid. We set off. Frankie leading the way. We get to a strange hut about 20 minutes of walking. Of course, there was really no way to tell how much time truly had passed on that island, as no clocks or records of time, days or even years were kept on this island. The strange hut hosted a variety of Jamaican witch doctors that had garlic hanging from ceilings, Bats flying around the fucking top of the hut. The fat old Jamaican lady with white hair and gray hair and a fake eye threw a jar of leeches on me and insisted that my blood was bad and the leeches were going to suck the evil out of me. Right. I looked at her, disrobed, laid all the leeches out on my now naked body and said to her, with a hint of, sarcasm, I said, "Can you please suck the blood out of the bad blood out of my penis as well?" Big mistake. An extra jar from her fridge, fridge of weird Caribbean voodoo, and fucking she pulled out another dedicated jar of leeches to my penis, right? Just one jar for my whole body, the other jar just on my dick. She just threw all the leeches on my penis, right? After about 4 hours of excruciatingly difficult pain, I was told not to move, as to let the leeches do their thing. She gave me a medical card, punched a hole in it, and jabbed me with a second COVID-19 shot. After my second dose of unknown substances, I started to feel a little alive. I started feeling really alive, actually. I looked around at what first to appeared to be an island of misfit, fat nobodies, these fat nothings, now rather seemed quite quaint and stimulatingly exotic. I don't know what these vaccines were doing to me in the long run. All I knew was I wanted more. Heck, I needed more. Our next stop on our Vax Express ended up in the Brazilian part of the village where the tall, long-legged Brazilian babes with giant asses and titties to match filled the medical examiner's room, right? There's just fucking bombshells, right? Beautiful women, all exotic looking Brazilian babes, man. Fucking just like Colombians, but Brazilian. Okay. I mean, all of these women were like 6 feet with proportions that looked as if you were witnessing them through a carnival's funhouse mirror. They weren't used to seeing visitors from the outside world, so they quickly took a liking to me. One jet black-haired bombshell and another fig blonde in particular loved me for 2.5 hours straight. Frankie was watching, eyes glued to me, ravaging these two native savages. Pitching to me as it was quite the spectacle. After spilling my final gram of protein onto the villager's face, I turned over and packed it in for that night. I awoke around noon when my body replenished the testosterone I expelled from my endeavors last night. I noticed something pulling at my bottom, seeming to be weighing me down. I turned around and found my buttocks has grown 3 times the size. Those Brazilian bitches must have thrown plastic in my ass while I slept. Curses. I left the Brazilian pavilion with a 3rd COVID shot. Now, after leaving with Frankie, we go to a nice Italian restaurant. I mean, fancy as can be, right? Some shit you would see in Goodfellas or something. All the Italian wait staff were cleaner than an operating table. Not one dirty greaseball. Unbelievable. The 5-course meal we had was fit for a king, and the gelato there was to die for. Now, as I'm picking my teeth, I ask Frankie, I say, how's about we hike over to get my 4th shot, right? Frankie, a bit stunned, just he's blinking rapidly, replies with, but sir, you've just had your 4th shot. It was in between your meals when the waiter asked how much Parmesan cheese you wanted on your linguine, and you jokingly let him pour out a ridiculous amount onto your plate before saying, it's too much, take it back. When the waiter patted you on the back, apologizing for his rude sautéing of your meal, he had a little needle taped to his hand, and taped to the inside of his hand, and that's when he dosed you. I was dumbfounded, perplexed at the sheer non-existent morals of this society, that their way to deliver and the way the people lived in, nonetheless, it was an efficient way to deliver medicine. I would have been furious if it wasn't for all the delicious food I already had in me. So we headed back to the hotel. I lit up a cigarette and fell asleep in my lazy boy recliner. I awoke to the sound of a fire ambulance sirens filling the silence when I was pulled from the burning building to which I almost did not make it. I almost died in that building. This set ablaze. Come to find out, one of the local imbeciles left an unattended cigarette burning on the floor. We got our fireproof vaccines to ensure everyone in the smoldering flames could continue to live on. And me and Frankie made our way to Chinatown to receive my final vaccination before meeting Dr. Fauci. We passed the beautiful rock garden pond, and entered into what appeared to be a dragon's mouth. There was this just one Chinaman punching wood, and laid next to him a pile of broken boards was also on the one side of him, and the other side of him was a pile of unbroken boards, I guess, ready to be broken. He stops punching without even looking up, and says, I hear you're ready to receive your 5th shot. Chinese medicine the Chinese, I can't really do it. Chinese medicine is a little bit different than your traditional medicine, he says, inching closer to me. I roll my eyes and I ask, how much more different can a fucking shot of some fucking medicine be from country to country? And before I could even finish my sentence, this little Bruce Lee fuck punched me square in the chest, knocking me physically back a couple feet, but spiritually, my soul left that building. I floated past the island, off of this earth, past the known universe, right? Like on some Doctor Strange shit. He punched the soul out of me. Till I got to a blank white space, right? Where time, much like the island, did not exist. In there was this fat man who called himself Buddha, and he sat legs folded, pouring out a cup of tea, right? Pouring out, hot tea, and he said, for your troubles, and handed me the cup. I took one sip, spit it in his face, as it was literally just hot water with some leaves in it. It wasn't even tea. The fat, bald Buddha laughed and said, humans are quite the funny creature. They want to be one with everything, but they don't even like the majority of what the planet has that they live on. Buddha, now taking a hit from a bong and blowing it out in my face, says, they spend their whole life seeking comfort, only to burn down the homes that they've built. Before Buddha could take another bong rip, I took the bong from his fat hands and I smashed it into a million pieces. He looks up puzzled and remarks, I was going to save the kills on that last rip for you. You would have I would have just took a small hit. You would have had some. I said, I don't want to get high now, and I was a bit, with a bit of hostility and has entered into my tone, as I came here to just get medicine, not some hippie spiritual lesson. He's still looking at the broken pieces of a once perfectly whole bong and says, but medium J, you already took your shot. I start flying through the cosmos, right? Back into our universe, back into the earth, back into, our solar system, back into the fucking, the island on the cold hard floor in Chinatown. I awoke inside Frankie's arms, and the Chinaman who punched me is nowhere to be found. Frankie was delighted to see that I haven't died. He says most people die after their 5th shot, administered by Su Wu King, but the records only ever include the ones that survive, since the deaths caused by a conflict of interest bias. Right? They don't record any of the people that didn't make the punch from the Chinaman, that fucking extracts your soul into a meeting with Buddha. They don't ever record that. I stumbled to my feet, eager to leave this wacky place and say, Frankie, take me to Dr. Fauci, right? Now, cue the long montage of travels, right? Cue it up, run it up. So we passed a forest of apes, right? That were, rather aggressive, but we held our own. We passed an old creaky bridge we almost didn't make, right? A crazy creaky bridge. And it broke the minute we crossed it, right? It just completely collapsed. We climbed to the top of the giant mountain on that island and finally got to this wonderful, beautiful waterfall. And I was instructed Frankie can go no further, as he did not have his adequate level 5 booster just yet. I walked through the magical waterfall, and to much chagrin, I seen a palace, if you will, not a place, but a palace that would put the Vatican to shame. In a golden throne sat Dr. Fauci, sipping from a golden chalice. He swirled the drink in his hand and claimed. They laughed at, he's with a fucking, with a fucking, real fucking, like, pissed off look. Like, very, like, sitting on his throne, sipping from his chalice. Pissed off, he said. They laughed at me when I told them I would be famous for making medicine that doesn't work. They called me mad. Now look at me. I have more money than God, with an island fit for a king. And the best part of this is not one single disease has been fucking cured. A little 16-year-old Brazilian girl comes up and pours more pina colada into his cup, while another little equally similar age Chinese girl, but I mean, again, with Chinese people, you can't, she might be 40, you never know. Another, young Chinese girl, young looking, fluffs his pillow. I yell out, Fauci, what was all this for? The experiments, the countless deaths, the isolation from society? What is the point of going through all this rigorous and ultimately useless work? It can't all just be for money. And he, Fauci, fucking laughs. That's where you're wrong, essential worker. That's what he called me. I think that's a slur, if I'm not mistaken. You can't comprehend this science. I've seen data points that your little mind can't even begin to fathom. Imagine a world where everyone has been forcibly administered medicine that I profit off of. Where everywhere you go, there's a new vaccine just around the corner. Imagine the compliance in a society where medical procedures are as common as taking a shower or eating fucking cereal. On this island, I've done just that. 100% compliancy is why I do this. He stops and he says, do you care to see the subjects the subjects who've received to cooperate? Before I could even answer, Fauci grabs my hand and leads us both down to an elevator that brings us down into the basement level of his Palace Mountain mansion. And like it came out of a nightmare, even Freddy Krueger would be too scared to enter. It was astonishing, to say the least. Men and women in jail cells, shackled, with pieces of their skulls missing, rashes that appear to be fatal, and rotten flesh with a bunch more medical anomalies that I am not equipped to diagnose. As we walked down the corridors, the inmates screamed out. They're pleading with the doctor to release them. They begged and begged and begged, but fell on deaf ears, right? Fauci turns to me and laughs scoldingly. He says their minds may be in compliance with my medical practices, but their bodies, he said, and he was singing at this point. I don't know why he was singing. Their bodies are telling me otherwise. He then yells out, Winston! And some half pig, half man comes crawling up to our feet. And Fauci goes, pointing at the fucking random jail cells, goes eeny, meeny, miny, mo on several of the prisoners and lands on a middle-aged woman with scoliosis. He says, Winston, rape her and then kill her. Cook her up for the other prisoners to eat. Then he looks at me and he whispers, I'm doing a new experiment to see the effects of trauma and the impact of the quality of meat. That's fucking wild. This wild son of a bitch, right? I just stood there with my jaw wide open, unable to process what I was seeing. I said, so everyone in this cursed island has been given daily shots in accordance with rules that you've set in place. I asked, how do you feel about taking shots that you know are absolute bullshit? You yourself has said they're bullshit. Why even take them, Dr. Fauci? I said, quite naively. He said, me? Oh, no. I don't take no such shots. Rule number 1, he said, don't get high on your own supply, kid. He quickly changed the subject and says, hey, medium, you want to see 2 prisoners fight to the death over the last measles vaccine? Or we could just watch 2 AIDS patients have violent, unprotected sex over some AIDS medication. I stood there disgusted by these unsanctioned medical practices. And after the 2 men finished their mutual climax, and the guy pitching got up, took the AIDS pill, popped it in his mouth, slumped over and died quicker than a dude that got raped to death did. You know what I mean? I knew I seen enough. After witnessing that, I knew I seen enough. I said, Fauci, I've seen enough. I can no longer stand here on this island in good faith. I've taken my fucking shots. And I'd like for you to fix my ship so I could leave this island once and for all. Dr. Fauci, unable to even look me in the eyes, was staring down at his shoes, the brand new Yeezys, Red Octobers, right? Not even a scuff was on them, by the way. Very expensive shoes. He said, sure, your boat was fixed the first day you awoke on this island, but you were too busy enjoying the comforts I've made accustomed to this island. You can leave any time, so long as you take your ship vaccine, he said. And he was doing that. He was furling his eyebrows, quite suspiciously, by the way. I roll my eyes and sigh. Okay, take your fucking vaccine. He pulls out a vaccine syringe from his lab coat and a stack of papers to sign, waiving any legal action I may partake in. And I got my final booster shot to leave this wretched island. Coincidentally, taking fucking more medical shots than I can count in the span of 3 days must have put me in an actual daze. I ended up passing out, only to awake with a completely different mind state. Now, over the course of the next few days, I found myself enamored with the day-to-day operations of this island. The people were friendly, the food was outstanding, and the scenery was quite exquisite. I found myself immersed with the island culture, and even found a job working with the 2 island goons who beat me up and drugged me unexpectedly. Now we end up drugging and beating up and drugging the unexpected visitors that washed up on the island, right? Life was good. Suddenly, the world wasn't all that gray. It wasn't all that weary. We were paid in vaccines, right? Free medicine. It's great. And on our days off, we got to go down to the prison ward and beat the compliance into the inmates. One day, Frankie picked up some magic mushrooms, though. And he went a little bit crazy. He jumped off the island trying to swim back to normal civilization. About a week later, Dr. Fauci, rolled out the mushroom vaccines in case anyone else on the island decided to have a fucking mind-altering fucking substance to really start questioning things, how things were run around here. We all bowed in praise of our Lord Dr. Fauci, who is already erecting statues in his honor for what he's been doing. One foggy evening, Christmas evening, I'm laying in bed with the blonde and the brunette Brazilian whores that on both sides of me, right? I get a knock at the door. I reach into my nightstand and I pull out a pistol I've acquired after receiving my pistol vaccine. My pistol vaccine cleared and I got that gun. I go to open the door with my gun drawn, aghast. It was little Frankie. soaking wet from head to toe as he just came swimming back to the island. Before I could even, exclaim my astonishment, Frankie jabs me in the neck with a syringe I've never seen before. This wasn't the island syringes that, we're accustomed to. This was some fucking new medical science breakthrough. And suddenly the ways of the outside world that became a distant past to me all came rushing back to me. A vaccine for vaccines. Frankie, you old sport, you're a genius. He says, now that you're back, Jay, we gotta stop Fauci once and for all. And as he turned his back to the blonde with the rather insanely large rack, she is still topless, by the way, she shot Frankie in the back with the gun that I had dropped after receiving the shot. And Frankie dropped all of his supply of curable vaccines that he brought for the island. As he laid there, dying in my arms, he said, mushrooms. Mushrooms. So I don't know how much rooms there are available for a dying man, Frankie. He said, no, mushrooms, with his dying breath. And I'm like, all right, mushrooms. With his final breath before the light faded through his eyes, I finally realized this guy's talking about those magic mushrooms he took the night he fucking disappeared from the island. I left that room after convincing the 2 smoke shows I was headed out to get my new vaccine to combat the vaccine that I just took. I made my way down to the cow plant and I picked up an incredible amount of magic mushrooms off of the cow shits. I went down to the vaccine factory and asked for a tour of the newest vaccines that were to be rolled out that week. Luckily, it was flu season, and the guy giving the tours excused himself multiple times to the washroom and left me alone for a few good minutes. In this time, I seen a giant vat of the vaccine fluids. So I opened up my backpack and I dumped out the fucking shrooms, filled with shrooms. I dumped them all in there. Over the course of that week, people on the island began to wake up. They started seeing clearly now. They started seeing life for what it really was, right? The people started to question the validity of the daily vaccinations, and the prison guards even they opened up the doors and let all the prisoners out, right? They let all of them out. After everyone got their psychedelic mushroom-dosed vaccine, the islanders all came together in the hunt for Dr. Fauci. The townspeople broke into his humble abode, where he now stood behind several inches of bulletproof plexiglass, and he was pacing back and forth, right? He's like, you guys are never gonna understand. He's just mumbling to himself. But then he broke his incoherent mumbles and said, Fauci exclaims, the blacks, the Jews, the whites, the Mexicans, and the Asians all worked so harmoniously together when separated. The moment these races started mixing, society collapsed. Look at you. Take a look. In 1 week, you destroyed years of progress that I've made on this island. For what? To get high on fucking fungi? Dr. Fauci knocks over a few beakers and some lab equipment off the desk that he had. Fear not, minorities, he says, for I have a cure for all your incessant thoughts in your head. All these new pharmaceutical FDA-approved mind-numbing vaccine, now 100% effective in thought control. Give up your freedoms and file in a single line. And come get the cure for your questioning mind. Fauci's pleas for cooperation fell on deaf ears. Yeah. The mob was angry. They were out for blood, right? I'd seen a couple people holding torches like a medieval mob almost at this point. Now, years of mind-numbing medical procedures instantly evaporated with one psychedelic dose of mushrooms, right? It's crazy. Crazy. All the medicine in the world couldn't even combat just the average mushroom growing on cow shit. Look at that. Look at you. It says something. There's a deeper meaning that I'm too dumb to understand. The mob took one of the failed experiments whose head grown into the shape of a battering ram and rammed it into the glass. Heave, ho, and little by little, the glass began to split and cracks were all down the middle. All the while, Fauci was pleading with the angry mob, claiming to have enough doses for everyone. He goes, stop this. I can fix you all. He still screams as they're ramming the dude's head into the fucking sides of the glass, shattering it eventually. To no avail, the mob broke down his glass fortress and piled on top of him like a fucking, like a dog pile in a football game after a loose fumble, and began one by one stabbing him with the vaccines he created oh so quickly. Like Julius Caesar, as he lay there, still attuned to be the showman that he was, with one final vaccine left, the half pig, half man crawled up, is Fauci's servant. He crawled up, and Dr. Fauci said, A2, Winston, A2. Right before Winston could just jab Anthony Fauci in the neck, I couldn't witness no more. As the mushrooms were wearing off and I was coming down, I started to sober up and I decided I needed to hop on the boat and sail back home. Now I got back into normal civilization. And in the months to come, I've received several letters from Frankie, who lived after the gunshot and remains on that island today. He survived. They patched him up. He survived after being shot by the beautiful blonde Brazilian woman, right? He survived, and he remains on the island today. He told me after the mob fed all the vaccines to Anthony Fauci, they rebuilt civilization on the island, and as far as technology is, it's progressed as far technologically as about Ohio, right? It got to the state of Ohio. They have a McDonald's, he says. They have a Whole Foods. And even next year, Taylor Swift is coming to town. That's what he said. I asked, recently I said, my last letter that I sent out to Frankie, I asked him, I said, whatever happened to Fauci? What did you guys end up doing with him, right? I left before I could see the mob what was quite apparently about to fucking rip the guy to pieces. I said, whatever happened to that guy? And in his most recent letter he sent back, he said, he sent a whole fucking sheet of paper with one sentence on it. He said, oh, he's doing just great. Currently, he's working as a Walmart greeter.